friends. So here we are, midweek, hump day. Yesterday I wrote a piece for my blog called Combating Our Social Disease and Preparing for a New Culture After the Crash. So how do we break the status quo and invent a new culture? But before I got into that, I was talking about propaganda. And I'm rereading Edward Bernays. He's written a few things I read years ago, but it's always fun to go back and revisit these things in the light of new technologies and all that kind of stuff. Propaganda never ends. So I talk about Edward Bernays a bit, and then I talk about Hayek again. I got back into Hayek again because you revisit economics. I was never a scholar of economics or an economist or anything. I was just mildly interested in it over the decades. I'm not an expert, as I keep saying. I can't explain these things to you, and I'll get to that later. But I'm interested, and I'm trying to share things with people that they might find interesting and helpful in understanding the world today and kind of empowering them to make better decisions, perhaps, because we're all going to die, but before we die, we're going to make some choices. And some of our choices are going to involve what we pay attention to. I read a piece this morning about how nobody reads anymore, and some more data on that, which is kind of sad. I mean, college students are reading less and less. High school students are reading less and less. It's a problem. It's a real problem. It really is, I think. And we're going to pay the price for that, unfortunately. So I talk about Hayek a bit, and then the power of propaganda. I go into quotes from Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, who was the propaganda minister for Nazi Germany. And I make some parallels with that and what people talk about regarding the cult of Trump, MAGA mania, and all that kind of stuff. And ethical dilemmas of persuasion and all that kind of thing. Mass psychology of Trumpism, I link to an article there, which is pretty interesting. And another deep dive podcast about the personality and career of Satan, which was Henry A. Murray's paper in 1962. And it's looking at Satan from a Judeo-Christian perspective, but also from a psychological perspective, so symbols of evil and so on. Very interesting stuff. And that connects with the Donald Trump thing, the sanctification of Donald Trump. And it all ties back to propaganda. And then eventually I get down to discussing, what can we do? Because I'm always thinking realistically, what can any of us do to turn the thing around if we think it needs to be turned around? If the ship needs to be turned around, how do we do it? If we need to change things socio-culturally and economically, what do we do? And it's tough. It's really tough. And some of the things just seem so trite because they're almost cliche at this point, talking about what we could do, like developing critical thinking skills, more on that later, supporting media literacy education, more on that later, as I recommend some other things to look at today, demanding ethical practices, gaslighting and greenwashing. Recently, I've been more and more aware of gaslighting and greenwashing and green bashing, blaming everything that goes wrong in the world on environmentalists, right? Oh, they're mental, they're environmentalists. And talking about some common logical fallacies and cognitive biases and heuristics and so on, more on that later. I'm going to suggest a critical thinking teacher to you. Dunning-Kruger, all of it's so old, it's been around forever. We should all know these things like straw man, ad hominem, and so on. But we don't. Confirmation bias, anchoring bias, so on. So how do we overcome the challenges in personal relationships, in the workplace, in politics, and all these kind of things. So it's a long thing, but a lot of it's an outline with just bullet points, so it doesn't take that long to read, actually. Of course, nonviolence, inclusivity, long-term vision, hope and resilience. Resilience is so important, and we're going to have to really train ourselves to be rugged, because the future isn't going to be easier than the past, unfortunately. We can have hope that there's going to be miraculous technologies that get us out of the woods, so to speak, out of the worst effects of the polycrisis, but it doesn't matter because we're still in a finite world, and we're still surrounded by people who don't understand nature, the natural sciences, energy, and so on, which is bad because we're going to continue making the same mistakes. And eventually we have to pay a price for all these mistakes. None of it's free. Unfortunately, it just isn't. So there's suggests about shifting the narrative and embracing radical change and all that kind of stuff. So you can look at that. I wish you would. Also, I wish you would click like and subscribe and share this. I don't know why people don't like anything I do. I don't know if it's that I'm really that bad or boring, or my message is just terrible, or I'm just bad at what I do. I put some work and effort into these videos and articles. So if anyone's feeling in a generous mood, they might want to click like. Maybe people are embarrassed to like what I produce because I'm an idiot or something. Or maybe people are stingy with likes and shares because they're too smart to just like easy. You know, you don't just like people. Like, do you really like me? Really? You know, it's like, I don't like somebody until I really know them, bro. And I understand that. That makes total sense to me. I'm too generous with my likes, I think. I don't know why that is. But I tend to like and support people, which is why I enjoy sharing other people's work. If I just had internal links to all my stuff and didn't share other people's stuff, I could get you to focus on me only because I know everything. And, you know, I could pretend like all the ideas out there are mine and new and something, or repackaged properly, you know, redesigned, re-engineered, easier to comprehend, easier to access, easier to use, more practical, more utilitarian, whatever. And that's a common thing that consultants do. You know, nothing new under the sun, but I just presented it in a new way, or copped a phrase, or invented a new word or something like that. I don't do that. I just share stuff from people that I think are interesting. Doesn't mean I agree with everything they say or anything like that. I like to wallow with people I disagree with and hang out, because at the end of the day, when I do, I'm hanging out with a human being, a person. And generally speaking, there are things we can agree on and things we can appreciate about each other, even if it's just the way we smile or a sense of humor or something as simple as that. You know, I disagree. I don't want, you know, this to happen or that to happen, or I didn't vote for so-and-so, but I do love the Broncos, or whatever the thing is that you can connect on. Simple things like just being friendly and nice. Like I said on social media recently, fake it until you're friends. So that's like fake it till you make it. You know, just be friendly until you're friends. You know, it might just work out. I don't like the way you look, you know, kind of thing. Doesn't get you very far in the world, and is kind of a miserable way to live, I think. If you want to be my enemy, that's fine. I'll get the picture. I'll get the message eventually. And there, you know, that's that, you know. It happens. So that's one thing. And then having to do with propaganda and big lies and so on. There's another piece, a guy I follow, Jan D. Ware, on Medium and Substack. I think he's really good. And he talks about, you know, business and finance and banking and all that kind of stuff, but not in a conspiratorial way. He does decent research. He's a good journalist. He was a teacher and so on. So He talks about the great masses of people will more easily fall victim to a big lie than a small one. That was Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. And he's talking about the big lie tactic when it comes to banking. And he talks about the mortgage crisis, housing crisis, derivatives crisis around 2005 to 2008 or 9, and how that happened and the big lies associated with that. Bottom line is they have the big lies they spread because they want to maintain and protect their big bonuses. I'm talking about bankers, people in the business. The bonuses are great, and you get them when you're sleeping, so it's obviously a cool thing. So I would look at that if you want to. I'm gonna also suggest yet again, because it kind of fits this package, that you gotta go back and look at Carl Sagan at the U.S. Congress in 1985, talking about we are all in this greenhouse together, and contemplate again why we're not paying attention to it and doing so little to address it. And the reason is our socioeconomic religion, or belief system, or ideology, call it what you will. And that's why I keep hearkening back to people like Hayek and von Mises and whoever, because you can learn a lot about the situation from how they think, and they're very rational, brilliant, intelligent, logical, creative thinkers, and they're just trying to figure things out, and their ideas are interesting and powerful. We have J.D. Vance, whose mentor is Curtis Yarvin, that I've talked about before, and they're winning. And so much of their reactionary BS is just BS. It's nonsensical if you look into it carefully, but people don't do that because it's intellectually taxing. You have to spend some calories thinking about things and reading and so on, and people don't want to do that. Boring. So anyway, those are two things that I want you to look at. And then another one, going back to the journalism aspect of stuff, is Rachel Donnell, who I think is a good person, a good young journalist who focuses on the climate crisis mostly. She wrote a piece about the election being hacked that I posted on social media and mentioned by Spoonamore. And I was skeptical of it, as I said, but it's interesting anyway. And she went back and looked into it, followed up, and did some more research, and admits that the evidence is thin. And Spoonamore also wrote another article explaining some mistakes he made in his analysis, and so on. You can read about that if you want. But still, there are problems with the election and election meddling and so on, like I said before, even if you're just talking about gerrymandering or something like that. Propaganda, lies, big lies. But the bullet ballots thing might be overstated. So she said that I was hoping the piece would flesh out more sources, a tactic used successfully in papers around the world. Makes total sense to me. You're an independent journalist and you want to just put the idea out there to see if anybody else has done anything. And after I read her article, I looked into it. I didn't find much out there, and I asked a friend of mine in California who's a computer security expert about it, and he said he didn't think there was much there at the moment, but it's something that everyone looks into in his business, and there are problems. But there wasn't much out there, so I kind of let it slide. So she says, I can make editorial decisions which tie media organizations in legal knots, ensuring a lot of stories never make it to the front gate. And, there is good work to be done there by independent journalists, people who have been booted out of the mainstream. The mainstream just can't afford to. It goes against the profit motive, their business model, their remit to delve into certain stories. They're just incapable of doing it. They'll be cut off. And that's just a fact. It's a business. Newspapers are a big business. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post for a reason. Musk bought Twitter for a reason. And we know what those are. It's pretty obvious. But anyway, I'm also aware of the role independent journalists like myself is to touch the stories the big guys don't want. To this day, I haven't seen my world exclusive investigation into the 500 billion worth of fossil fuels off the Gaza's coast covered in any major newspaper around the world, although it did get a segment on Russia Today, which makes sense, Russia Today. And you're going to say, Russia, all evil, whatever. If you think like that, you don't want to be at my channel, I guess. So, Russia's Russia and France is France. They're full of people just like you. They have an agenda. The players in each country have an agenda. In my world, there are no nation states. They're just people that live in harmony with nature. I'm a tree hugger. What an idiot. Anyway, there are critically important geopolitical factors driving Israel's genocide of the Gaza people, which they hide under the shadow of October 7th. Believe it or not, whatever. The G word is used all over the place. Can't avoid it. Things are going on. I think Trump is such a pro-Israel guy that a lot of people are going to die in the Middle East in the coming years. It's going to be a bloodbath. And at the end of the day, Kushner might be building golf courses in Gaza and resorts, and they may be getting all the gas that Russia used to provide Europe from offshore Gaza. The great game is played for control of these resources because it's profitable. That's the game. Control the resources. It's monopoly, only much bloodier. Similarly, the global North's jaw-dropping support of Netanyahu's campaign was perhaps caused by a desperate need for gas after Russia's supply was cut off from the market. It's a hypothesis, it makes sense, and you can look into it and the evidence will be clear because it's something that you can disprove. More on that later. The Karl Popper thing, falsification. You can go in there and say, well, it makes sense to me, but you can try to disprove it. And if you can't disprove it, you might find good evidence that confirms the hypothesis, rather than just looking for things that confirm your biases. So I find Musk's feverish last-minute involvement in the Trump campaign unsettling, and like many, I found the assurances from Trump that he had already had enough votes to win long before the election a little bit strange. And then she says, her last point, stop the vitriol. I'm shocked at why some readers are choosing to speak to each other in the comments and disappointed by the malice others relish when addressing me. Yeah, and more on this later because I watched this video. The guest is a really cool person. I like her website a lot, and I would definitely recommend that you check her out. And also, I would send your kids there if you have children or young adult children or whatever, anybody really. She has a website called Thinking is Power, and it's for educators and media and normal people like us, and she discusses critical thinking and all that kind of stuff. She's very interesting, and she teaches how to think clearly about information and not just science or something, and how to think about fake news and alternative medicine and detox and bee pollen and all that fun stuff. And I think she's cool, and she had a great conversation with the Thinking Atheist.
Oh gosh, I heard so much in there that I related to. I personally, have you seen the there's a news clip supposedly from Trump in I think it's the late 90s, and it's from People magazine, where he says that if I were to run for president, I'd run as Republican.
Yeah.
Because they're the stupidest voters in the world or something.
Oh, that's been memed all over the place. People share it and say, aha, he knew decades ago. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, not true.
That's true.
Completely fake. I always use it when I present about fake news, because the point is, when we tend to fall for things that aren't true, primarily when they confirm our biases. Like, oh, yeah, that makes sense that he would say that. When it triggers our emotions, there's that word again. So it makes us laugh. It makes us feel, self-righteous, angry, afraid. And when we hear it repeated, so amongst left echo chambers, it goes around a lot. But it's not true. I tend to show it alongside there was a news story that popped up around the same time, and it was Pope Francis shocks the world and endorses Donald Trump. This was in 2016. And again, totally fake, but that went around right-leaning things. Because again, it seemed true, it confirmed biases, and it triggered emotions. We can all fall for things that aren't true because of these various, because of ourselves, our own vulnerabilities. They make us feel like, yeah, we're right about this, and look how stupid the other side is. People think misinformation is an other people problem. Other people are stupid, and other people will fall for misinformation, but I am really smart, and I wouldn't fall for that. So I'm a biologist, and the single most unifying theory in all of the life sciences is evolution. Evolution helps us understand the unity and diversity of life, why things are similar because they have a common ancestor, and why they're different because of different selection pressures and genetic drift and so on that led them to different evolutionary endpoints. Okay, all that's to say, my tribe generally accepts evolution, but it's not because they understand it. It's because their tribe accepts it. So when we look down on people who don't hold those same beliefs, it's not because we're really smart and because we have a understanding of science that, the stupid people don't. It's just because our tribe happens to believe those things. But there's absolutely zero chance that our tribe is right about everything.
So a curious guy like me, I might be able to explain depth of field in photography or cinematography in layman's terms, but I couldn't tell you the science behind it. A lot of people are Christians, but they've never really read the Bible or studied it very much, but they believe in it anyway because it feels good. Their tribe believes in it and whatnot. You hate other people because of something or another, but you don't know anything about them or their beliefs. It's a problem. We got to get over that. What is it? The illusion of explanatory depth describes the common realization we have when we begin to explain a concept that we actually understand, and we actually understand it far less than we thought we did. So, tell me about evolution, and you're like, okay, Charles Darwin, and you're really struggling to explain it to somebody. What happens? The illusion of explanatory depth happens for 4 reasons. When information is not in front of us, or our memory is foggy, stuff like that, believing that we can briefly explain multiple parts or levels of a concept leads us to believe we understand the entire concept better, but we really just understand a little piece of it. Not having a natural endpoint for explanations feeds our ego and leads us to believe we can explain anything well, since there is no such thing as complete. And you see this with online gurus all the time. They talk so well. They sound like they know everything. They're very rhetorically adept. But they don't know what they're talking about, and the more you think about it, look into it, the more stupid they look. But people love it because they sound good. We rarely explain things, therefore don't get the practice or feedback we need to understand our own shortcomings in communication and style and just understanding. You know, if you're talking to another expert in something, they can point out where you might be a little bit wrong, or you need to learn a little bit more, or you're leaving something out. So example one, rash decision making, political extremism, and how to avoid it. You can avoid the IOED by explaining concepts in detail out loud before launching into debate or making decisions regarding them. Keep an open mind, eyes, and ears, and be sure to understand all sides of a topic before picking one to vouch for. So that's pretty good advice, I think. So I'll leave it there and put the links in the description. And yeah, I think I'm done. Yeah. And suggest you go look at those things, and also have a look at my blog at Substack, Cospelon, or Medium at my name, and also cospelon.eu, Globe Hackers blog. And I'll put links in the description, and you can enjoy that if you will. But I'm sure you've found other interesting things to look at. You don't have to, take my advice or accept my suggestions. But anyway, thanks for hanging with me for a bit. 26 minutes. Oh my God. Anyway, take good care. Have a nice rest of the week. William T. Out.